It's a pleasure to be with you, however remotely and however long distance. I'd like to share with you two or three aspects of our current reality that is really important, simply as reminders. and then I will have a particular conclusion to leave with you for you to think about. Sorry. The first point is the nature of the AI paradox. And the paradox is quite simple. It's part of our reality. And it is that the, the speed with which AI technologies and applications have developed are really very, very fast. Faster than our ability to guarantee security and to guarantee stability. The image I have of the situation is this: imagine you're driving a car and you're speeding, then you're putting your foot on the brakes, and then you're speeding again, foot on the brakes again, and this goes on throughout the entire session. You might damage the car, you might get into an accident. It's not very pleasant. So this may not be the best idiom or the best comparison, but it gives you a sense of where we're at the moment. We would like to speed up, and we would like to have maximum security. And these two objectives are coming up against a second reality, and that is that, that all AI applications are usually tightly connected to cybersecurity, to the cyber domain. And malicious applications can damage your cyber communication and your cyber connection, etc. But you can't separate yourself from the cyber tools that are available in order to communicate and to transmit your intention and to transmit your preferences or to apply the tools that you have. So we have to watch out for the relationship between AI and cybersecurity and the way in which maliciousness can enter into this relationship or these transactions. That's background, that's reality. This is something that we have to live with until we can improve the situation. Now, this brings me to the next point, and that is the alignment problem. Now, the alignment problem is, is something that we can do something about. It means that we have to align the applications that we have for AI for governance, which is our topic today, to the audience. To the context of the audience or to the context of the target, so to speak. Remember that we are operating in a social context. As technology comes in with expectations that we'll behave in certain ways, we want to make sure that there isn't a big gap between our realities and our day-to-day operations and what we're trying to achieve and the intent and the directives that the technology is suggesting that we go. Now, this is in principle, and in practice, when we're talking about governance, it means that it's going in the direction of getting services to be provided or getting something to happen that is related to some role that is also related to some function that the bureaucrat has that has to be performed for society. So in a sense, the alignment issue is one that says we have to align the expectations of and the realities of all of the actors that are involved in this transaction. Now, we know that we haven't dealt with this very well. Fine, we will learn. But at the bottom, at the core of all this is what we know about AI risk. The highest risk that we're incurring when we deal with any AI technology, so the data tells us, is ways in which a human being, the individual, individually or as a group, behave. We can't always rely that their behavior is consistent with our expectations from a technology perspective. The data from the MIT Risk Repository shows with absolute confidence, if you can believe in statistical absolutism, so to speak, and I'm exaggerating here, that it is a human being that is the highest highest source of risk in any AI communication transaction. Now, the risk is intended or unintended. The poor individual may be just doing the best that he or she can, or it can, but it conveys and it transmits a risk. So alignment is in itself a challenge that we have to deal with. We haven't defined it clearly in the context of governance and AI governance, but we know it's the elephant in the room. And the reason it's the elephant in the room is because the alignment manifests itself in several ways. You have to align the technology with the product to the target, and this target community or individual may have very many roles. So role changes and adaptation and alignment to roles, to expectations, become really complex. We've been much more used to thinking about the automation without intermediation. But somewhere along the line, it is becoming extremely important to take into account the intent on the technology side, the intent on the human recipient side, the intent on the governance side, and the intent in the overall social arrangement side or bureaucratic side or whatever. It becomes rather challenging to get all these intents aligned, assuming that all of them are behaving in an honorable way, that we don't have a malicious actor in this situation. I would consider this as one of the biggest challenges that we have to deal with. Let's put this one aside, and let me just add one more thing to these brief remarks, and that is the complexity of governability. What we're talking about here in this context is governability that involves the state or the government or the regulatory agencies or some entity with authority. That's number one. A technology tool managed by a technology company where services are sold or leased or whatever on the other side, on the second side. And the third side is the recipient of the instructions or the recipient of the help from this transaction. So these are three different parties to a simplified AI governance scenario I'm suggesting, just simplified, each of them with intents, each of them operating to support their own roles and preferences and expectations, and they are not necessarily operating in the same time frame, in the same rates of change. Technological change is very rapid, and the creators and the supporters operate fairly rapid to increase and to improve speed. Remember the idiom of the car, speed is there. The governance and government agencies, the regulators, operate under some kind of rules and regulations that are usually at some kind of statutory or legal foundations, and do not change fast. The last thing we want is laws to change at the rate of change of technologies. That would create too much speed. Besides, it's not the job of the government or the job of regulator to operate at the speed of change of various technologies. In fact, we look to the government and to the institutions by definition as points of stability in society. So here we have an interaction between very rapid influences or directives or intents from the technology side, and the two agencies or governments whose job it is to be stable and solid and reflective and follow the rules. We don't want those rules to change too fast. So we have here some kind of disconnect or misalignment or challenge that has to be met. And I would consider this challenge as one that can be met by managing or developing governability, social contract of governability. where the parties come to the table, agree as to what the rules and regulations are, reflect on their intent, and then stick to the agreement and to the intent throughout the whole transaction. It is not, it's an image where they're at the table and they stay at the table until it's done, until the task is done. At the present time, even when we talk about AI for AI action, there's an impression that there's an AI tool, act, etc., that is thrown at or is directed towards an entity and the entity takes it. But that is not really the best idiom or the best visual representation of what is happening. The hypothesis I'd like to leave you with is that we really are in a search for a viable social contract between the technology and the creators of the technology, the government and the regulators, and those whose job it is to protect society and to facilitate the roles, the functions of the operators that are supposed to serve society. And then I was going to say bureaucrats, but that's not quite right. The individuals whose job it is to follow a set of rules that would become more effective, more efficient, and more responsive with the AI tools. So even with this verbiage that I'm sharing with you, you can see the sources of disconnect. And these are the sources that are fixable once we get around the table and have a more pragmatic view of the actual operations that have to take place for effective use of AI in governance contexts. And I think with that, I would say this is about as much as I'd like to share with you. And I'd like to thank you for your for listening to this. And I'd like to get your reactions if you have the time. Thank you. Bye-bye.